It turned out that the previous owner of this Corvette lied to me about a lot of things. That is the main reason I hate buying cars these days, and it's because you can't trust anyone. Generally, I don't even ask them any questions because I just go check the car out for myself, just because I know that I can't trust anybody. But in this case, the car was about 3.5 hours away from where we live, and I didn't even want to make the drive if it wasn't going to be worth it. Fortunately, I was able to notice most of the issues right off the bat, and I was able to use them to my advantage to get a little better price. Some of the things, though, unfortunately, I wasn't able to see until I got the car home. All the tie rods looked like this. Completely annihilated. I asked specifically about the tires, and I was told they were in good health. They had about 85% tread left. Well, this is what the fronts look like. They do have a lot of tread, except for the inside shoulder, where they're damn near worn out. Rear tires looked okay. One did look a little bit low. I didn't bother worrying about it too much, but when I got it home, I did find a plug in one of them, and it was leaking slowly. I know you have to have reasonable expectations, and I know things are going to be wrong with a 20-plus-year-old car that's got higher miles on it, but to ask specific questions before making a 3.5 hour drive to look at it and then be lied to blatantly about those questions is kind of annoying. One of the first questions I asked was, of course, is there a check engine light on or anything going on unusual on the dash? No, everything's great. Car runs perfect. Great. Well, the first thing that I noticed when I fired the car up was that the oil pressure was pegged all the way over at 180 psi. Oil pressure sensor was bad. Didn't mention it. You really don't get all the details from pictures on Marketplace, especially when the interior shot is taken from about this angle. Everything looked all well and good, and I asked what the condition of the interior of the vehicle was. He said it was probably about an 8.5 out of 10. Not so bad, I thought to myself. But then, of course, when you see the car in person, you have the standard tear in the driver's seat, a little bit of a tear down here at the bottom. The cushion in the driver's seat is essentially gone. Not much cushion at all. Passenger seat, not in too bad a shape, no tears or rips or anything of that nature, but the driver's seat was in this condition. If you guys have been following along, you'll know that I replaced the shifter knob, but I also made my own leather shift boot using a metal shift boot retainer. When I went to see this vehicle, that was one of the first things I noticed. The shift boot was in very, very rough shape. The retainer, the plastic retainer, was all torn up. The guy just seemed to mess it up when he pulled the center console out for whatever reason. I was happy to see that I did have the double din stereo set up, but what you can't see in the photos or couldn't see in the photos was that this was all messed up. The double din screen itself was not installed in the proper location, so it was not centered properly in the opening. And again, this had cracked, so that was a little bit disappointing to see, especially considering the asking price of the car. The guy owns his own detailing shop, and as one would expect, the paint condition of this vehicle is actually really good, but I anticipated the engine bay and the interior would be in just the nicest shape. I had reasonable expectations. It is a 22-year-old car, and the interior is not in terrible shape, but it's just not as good as I had anticipated based on what he was telling me. And I could not believe at the poor condition that the engine bay was in. When I popped the hood, I was kind of baffled, especially considering how nice the exterior is in this vehicle. I mean, you're a professional detailer, for crying out loud, and you take such good care of the paint. I would have anticipated you take care of the condition of the vehicle throughout. But man, was I mistaken. The Z06 wheels looked nice in the videos, and like I said, I asked about the condition of the tires, and I told they were great. I assumed the wheel condition was decent as well, especially considering how nice the paint is on this car. But every single wheel has at least some curb rash. It's just another one of those things. I just don't understand how it happens. Obviously, accidents occur. I could see there being curb rash on one of the wheels, maybe two, but curb rash on all four wheels. Ugh. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining or that I had unreasonable expectations, because I did. I did have reasonable expectations, but that was the reason for asking all these questions before making the trip. And when I ask you specifically, how's the condition of the vehicle? How's the glass look? How's the tint look? Well, tint is fine. Glass is all good. Windshield, I gotta say, is actually in pretty rough shape. Big chip here and a big chip here. And once you know it, window tint, peeling only in the corners. I'll give them that. Only in the corners. It was peeling, but it was peeling nonetheless on both windows. Lights and everything work, no problems. Yeah, no problems. Everything works great. Lights are all good. I was thinking, man, this thing sounds actually pretty darn good. It's going to be a good deal. I'm going to make the drive 3.5 hours and everything's going to check out. And we're going to come home with a nice C5 Corvette. But as soon as I get there, I notice right away the fog light lenses, both cracked, both mangled up, both old. No problem. I'm going to change them out with LEDs anyway. But again, I asked you about the lights and you said they were all good. Everything was in good condition, but they weren't. And what else? I didn't notice this, of course, until I got home, because I didn't turn on or off the headlights while the car was just sitting there. I didn't use the headlights until I got home, and I noticed that the driver's side headlight motor is going out. It's got that nasty rattle when you close the headlight. Again, I was going to be replacing them anyways, doing some work on the headlights because we got these LED lights to install, but still, I asked you for a reason. And finally, the main questions of them all. How's the engine? How's the transmission? Are they both healthy? Car idled nicely, seemed to run really smooth down the road, pulled really strong. So I didn't really have too many concerns about the engine. There was a noticeable exhaust leak. Again, not too concerned with that. Again, the car pulled nice and smooth, pulled really strong. The clutch felt good, nice and firm. All the gears engaged really well. Had kind of a nice short notchy feel going through all the gears. We got the MGW short throw shifter. I was pretty pumped until we got to the point of the test drive where we had to turn around. And then he tells me when you put it into reverse, you kind of have to click it in there and let out of the clutch slowly. Then you'll feel it pop into gear and you have to hold it. Otherwise it might pop out. Again, I asked you, how's the engine? How's the transmission? Are they healthy? Do they go into all gears? Any issues with pop outs, anything of that nature? Nope. Everything is good. Trans is healthy. Engine is healthy. Okay, good deal. I started to think that everything was a lie. Everything was a lie. And when I got it home and I started pulling all the valve covers off and taking the wheels and tires off, and I was seeing all the bushings and all the tie rod ends and all the sway bar end links, they were all trash. I saw how dirty the engine bay was. I saw how dirty the rear diff was. Clearly, the only thing that had been maintained and taken care of on this car was the paint. Everything else was just let to rot. Of course, I took the car on because it's a project for the channel, so I was seeing it sort of as an opportunity to get a bunch of content out of. And again, I leveraged the fact that all of these things were wrong with the car, that were clearly visibly wrong with the car, in order to get a good deal. Unfortunately, prices continue to drop for the next couple of months afterwards, so I probably could have got an even better deal if I had been a little bit more patient. But with that being said, got the vehicle home, started taking care of some of the maintenance issues right away, and I think we're in a really good spot now that we've got, all of the tie rod ends replaced. I've got the wheel bearings. Oh, that's the other thing. Get the car out on the interstate, you start to hear the wom, wom, wom noise of the wheel hubs and bearings that are bad on this car. And if you're going to change one, you might as well change them all. Clearly, they hadn't been changed, 20 years old. But the one fact that actually made me feel a little bit better about the car was that he had driven it regularly, and most people shy away from vehicles that get up there in the higher mileage range, up in that 75, 80 to 100,000 mile range. But really, that tells me that the car is healthy enough to be driven. The one thing that you run into with these very low mile Corvettes, you run into a 1999 or 2000 or 2022 Corvette and it's got 25,000 miles on it. The thing has just sat. And that's when rubber seals go bad. That's when leaks pop out of nowhere. That's where things just start to fall apart when you start to actually put miles on them. So I felt pretty good about the car, knowing that it had as many miles on it as it had and that the thing had been driven. This really bothers me when people lie to you. You're spending thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on a vehicle, and they can't even be truthful and honest with you when you ask them questions. So that'd be my one bit of advice. Ask a lot of questions. It doesn't matter if you're annoying. You're putting money into this. This is something that you're going to spend your money, your time, and your effort on. And the least they could do is be truthful. And if they're not, you have to make sure you're keeping an eye out for some of those things. And, unfortunately, people try to get the most amount of money that they possibly can out of the things that they're trying to sell. And of course, who wouldn't want to, right? But when people do it deceivingly, it is so frustrating. It's infuriating. I've always been one of those people that tries to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I try to stay as positive as I possibly can, and I try to assume that everyone is good and honest. And I really am trying my very best to stay as positive as I possibly can still, but the reality is, unfortunately, that it seems like people are just out for themselves, and they're going to do anything, say anything, tell you anything in order to make a deal happen, and then you're shit out of luck. And unfortunately, I think I'm running into the same issue with the seller of the SQ5 that I just recently purchased for my wife. People just dishonest. Sort of makes you lose faith in people a little bit, and actually is sort of a demotivator. Makes me lose some motivation in doing this. I mean, what this channel was all about is to get new vehicles, try out new platforms, learn new things, meet new people. And unfortunately, part of that is buying and selling vehicles, and it's just been sort of a nightmare experience over the last couple of years. You just can't trust people. You just can't trust people, to be honest with you, when they're selling you a vehicle. And it's hard to let people come and test drive your vehicle because they're just tire kickers and they want to go for a joyride and rip around and beat the crap out of your stuff. with no real commitment and no real interest in purchasing it. So people just don't care about you. They don't care about your things. They don't care about your time, and it's sad. So just one of those things that's at the top of mind right now. But I would say if you're in the market for a vehicle, C5 Corvette or any other vehicle out there, make sure you ask the questions. Make sure you have a checklist of things you want to go over when you're taking a look at it. Don't get overwhelmed by the process. Don't feel rushed by the person selling you the vehicle. Look over everything with a fine-tooth comb. Make sure that they were being honest with you in their replies to your questions, and only make the purchase if you feel good about it. And you know, sort of is what it is. Unfortunately, that's the state of the world now, and that's sort of how people are. But good luck to you in your pursuit of your next vehicle. Hopefully you don't run into the same issue that I ran into. The seller of this C5 Corvette lied to me pretty blatantly on a couple of different occasions when I was asking questions about its condition. So if you have better luck than me, but nonetheless, I think we got a decent deal on the car because I used that to my advantage and called him out on a couple of things when I got there. So I think it all worked out in the end. We got a cool car for the channel now, and there's a lot more coming up for the C5 Corvette. So I hope you guys will stick around. Subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you watching this video, and I appreciate you following along up to this point. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.